Hello and welcome to Northwest Knitting. My name is Kathy and I live in Eugene, Oregon. I'm here to talk about my journey to create a more sustainable wardrobe for myself. And this is where I think about and work on my knitting projects and explore different fibers. Mostly wool, which is my favorite, but also some of the other um, more sustainable and less processed wools and yarns. So today, it's been a while. I had a big break before my last podcast, so I decided I was going to try and come back a little sooner. I'm so happy to be here again, and welcome to all of you who have been here before and followed me and commented. I really appreciate it. And if you're new here, welcome to you. The reason I ended up making the Ranunculus sweater, which many of you have heard about and probably many of you have made, but I was late to the party on this, and so I want to talk about my sweater and some of the other things I'm working on, but my major focus is going to be the Ranunculus. So I guess the first question is, why is everybody so crazy about this sweater? Why have some people made 5 or more? I think Selma on Little Big Knits said that she's made 6 and gave a couple of them away. A lot of people have made this. And so I think the answer to the question is, I think there are 2 main things. One is it's knit on at a very loose, it's knit on very big needles. And I think she calls for size 10. I ended up going with size 9 because I liked the fabric it created with this yarn, and that took me off gauge, and so I had to make some adjustments that I'll tell you about. But the gauge here is 14 stitches for 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So, and my gauge was 4.5, so I had to make adjustments. I probably could have, if I had gauge, I probably would have been very happy with the very smallest size, which I don't normally wear. But it's meant to be loose. It's cut loose gauge on big needles. It goes very fast. The other thing is that people have really tried all kinds of yarns with this, and so I've seen it go from the very lace light fingering to worsted weight yarn, and people come out with glorious results. So, and because it's knit on big needles, you don't need very much yarn. So if you have 1 or 2 skeins of some precious yarn in your wool pantry, then you can probably make this sweater and be happy with the result. So I think that's why it's so popular. I'm already thinking of some woolly projects that I could make. So what I did with this, I think I talked about this last time, but the yarn I'm using for this is the fiber company Meadow, and it's a blend of llama, silk, linen, and merino wool. And it is a lace weight yarn, and it comes in a length of 545 yards or 498 centimeters. So it's got a lot of yardage, and it's very, very thin yarn, but it's gorgeous. It is 40% wool, 25% llama, 20% silk, 15% linen. So I have never, this is the wooliest sweater I've made with, for a summer knit. Well, that's not true. My Queensland United has, I think, about 50% wool in it, but this also has llama, which I don't think is a cool, hot weather wool. So I do have a lot of, that's 65% of kind of the warmer fibers. But somehow it's it's such a loose gauge, and it's also that silk and linen. I'm hoping that I can wear it when it's at least in the low 80s or something. So anyway, I love the yarn, and originally I bought it as a one skein project. I think I mentioned that last time, and I ended up going back maybe even 6 months later, and they still had it, so I bought another skein of it. And for this project, I held 2 strands together to get my gauge, and it is still, 4.5 is a pretty loose gauge, and I, I don't think I'd feel comfortable going with something looser for that combination, but I didn't want to have to wear a camisole under it. So that was, I really wanted to have coverage, and I think it works out okay. So some people have made this ranunculus with just one skein of the Meadow. Oh, and also my colorway for this is Larkspur. So anyway, really fun yarn. It just slides through the fingers. I used my Chiago interchangeables, the red twist, and I used a size 9. So anyway, I am real happy. I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to tell you about the comedy of errors. I almost felt like I should call this the knitting comedy show, because it was crazy how many issues I had for a sweater that is well written and didn't need to be as complicated as I made it. But anyway, let me show you. It's got this nice yoke, and with some fun different stitch patterns that were new to me. It's meant to be pretty cropped. I made it longer as usual. I haven't blocked it yet. I'm thinking it might, the way it feels to me is it might be a little bit drapier when I block it, which I will do, but I was just anxious to show you this. So here it is. It is literally fresh off the press, off the needles. So let me tell you all the different things I did and what happened. My big issue with this is I have done a lot of sweaters with short rows. So they're not new to me. I do German short rows. I really like them. I've been doing them for a while. However, I started this when I was still pretty affected by COVID. And by the way, thank you for all of the kind comments. It took me a good 3 weeks to get over this. And I'm still, every once in a while, I'm not really at a full day, and I haven't resumed the walks I take with my husband. So for me, this was a long process. I was able to, for most of it, I was able to read and knit and everything. But after my last podcast, I tried to do too much, and I wouldn't say I fully relapsed, but I definitely had one full day on the couch after going to a fiber festival. Bad girl. But anyway, I have a lot of experience with short rows, and I would expect not to have had this problem. somehow, this pattern has short rows in the back and it has short rows in the front. And after I divided for sleeves and I put it on, it was extremely obvious that I had omitted a row or more of the short rows on one side. So it was, I omitted it on this side and in the back on this side. So I just quit early. And oh my gosh. And I had already gotten down, when you get down and you've divided for sleeves, and I probably had done maybe an inch. And then I tried it on to check on fit, and I had steam blocked it. And oh my gosh, I'm the kind of person who I can be sitting in a restaurant and I look up and I see a picture that's crooked, and I don't know what. Anyway, I like things to be symmetrical and kind of even. And so much agony. What do I do about this? I showed it to my husband and my best friend who knits but not garments, and they both care about symmetry also, so they were very good to talk to about this. And we debated on so I knew I couldn't leave it as is. When my friend Debbie said you could wear a scarf. So anyway, that was not going to cut it. But so I did not want to redo all this. It's not that time consuming, and I loved working the yarn. And in a way I thought, well, I would still enjoy doing it again. I'm hoping to make more of these, use this pattern again. So it wouldn't be the end of the world to do it, but I had gotten all this far, it just didn't seem right. So what I ended up doing is I ripped it out until I got back up before dividing for sleeves. And then I resumed knitting, but I moved the beginning of the round an inch over so that it would be centered differently. And so that is what I've done. And so maybe you'll notice it, but I think it's not super noticeable. Now, the other one thing is, I think the back is probably pretty wacky, but I can't see it. And unless one of you comes upon me in the grocery store and says, those short rows look pretty funny, I just decided I wasn't going to worry about it. So anyway, that was my resolution, and that I offer to you as a possible solution to the short row thing. So back to short rows though. I have never done short rows in the front before, and I know a lot of people like it. I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure. I might not do it next time, but we'll see. I might like to think about it a little bit more and see what other people have done. But I know somebody on my Instagram, when I posted my yoke, said they had omitted them in theirs, and we're happy with that. So anyway, so let me start at the beginning though about all the things that I did. This pattern starts with, you can do a wider neck, or you can do a smaller neck. So I decided to do the wider neck, and but I did not follow the instructions. She recommends, if you do the wider neckline, she recommends a double twist loop cast on. and then you cast on 60 stitches. And I'm pretty sure I did, I think I did the German twisted cast on, but this is not very wide to me. So I don't know. But again, I did not have gauge. So anyway, I did it that way because I had heard other people say that they had just used longtail cast on, and it was totally fine. So I think it might matter, depend on what your expectations are. But so I did that. I should point out that you can get down to I think you do all of this lace work before you have to decide what size you're wearing. So that's what I didn't. I was still debating, and I actually used the sweater as my swatch. So not recommended, but that's what I did, and I think I was pretty right on that. It seemed to work out okay, because it was so forgiving in terms of being very wide. Like the smallest size has a chest measurement of 46, which for me would be quite relaxed. And it goes up to a size 70 inches. So it's hugely size inclusive. I think when it first came out, it was kind of a one size fits all, which everybody knows doesn't exist. And so some of the Ravelry reviews that you read will be talking about that initial pattern, but then it was redone, and it has just many, many sizes. So I thought, well, with 46 inches to work with, I felt less concerned about measuring to the last inch. But I'm glad I didn't go any smaller. So, I mean, in terms of gauge or anything. So, the way I figured out my size is I looked at, when you divide for sleeves, what the numbers were, and so I tried a little bit of math, and I divided my gauge, which was 4.5 inches, and I divided it into the numbers that you would have, what you're supposed to have after you've divided for sleeves. And so I picked the size that had 180 stitches divided by 4.5, and I came up with about 40. So I decided I would rather have it fit more firmly here, and then do my usual increase at the hips for the little bit that I would need. So anyway, that's why I ended up picking a size 3. Okay, and I should say that this yarn, I did do quite a bit of unraveling with it, and it really withstood the unraveling beautifully. I do not usually just embark on a new yarn without reading about it and seeing how people say it wears and everything, but I really just cast this on without too much consideration compared to my usual, and I just decided I wanted to just see what it was like, and so I didn't think about it too much. So I'll report in some future episode if this is really annoying and pilly, but I don't think it's gonna be. So anyway, we'll see. There are, let's see what else. Okay, in the pattern, the one really fabulous thing about this pattern is that, oh my gosh, I didn't say the designer. The designer is Midori Hirose of Knit Cafe Midori, and she has some fabulous other designs if you are looking for some interesting different patterns. Anyway, what she does with this pattern is she has on the Ravelry page, and you don't have to buy the pattern to see this. On the Ravelry page, there are instructions for every single thing that's required in this. And so every interesting little stitch that she has you do, she shows you how to do it. She shows you how to do the cast on, just everything, the bind off. You could just have a good little tutorial by going through each one of those. So I probably looked up 2 or 3 things. There's an interesting, you could see this stitch where see these where they you end up pulling a strand over. They're all very enjoyable and very fun to do. So I think if you just follow the instructions and check out those tutorials, there really isn't anybody. I mean, I think most people could do this without too much difficulty, or if you're inexperienced, with a little bit of experimenting and practicing. So let me see, what else was there? I did my sleeves a little bit shorter, maybe an inch shorter, and I wasn't happy with that. And so this morning I took them out and made them longer. And I ended up with, oh my gosh, here it is. This is how much yarn I had left. So my initial plan was that I would leave work on the body of the sweater and then do the sleeves to make sure I did one sleeve, but then I went and finished the body, and I do wish that I had fully done both sleeves, because I was doing a funny little dance with this yarn at the end. It was, I was cutting it pretty close, but I wanted to use every bit of it. So that's what I was thinking. I ended up doing the bottom rib. I used Jenny's super stretchy bind off, and then I hadn't the first time I did these, but I used it for the sleeves, and I'm really happy that I did that. The other thing is the pattern calls for a twisted rib, and I feel like that twisted rib works really nice for not pulling in too much, and it's loose and comfortable. So I do like that pattern. I did find I did the sleeves on double pointed needles, and when I was doing the super stretchy bind off, you are bringing, you knit and they have instructions for super stretchy bind off in rib, which is what you'd want to look at if you're doing the rib. And so you knit a stitch, before you knit a stitch, you do a yarn over backwards, and that creates, you'll end up with 3 stitches on there, and then you take the last 2 stitches and put them over the first. And with the double pointed needles and this yarn, I found it very difficult to get both strands of the yarn to pull that over my remaining stitch. So for a lot of it, I had to do 1 stitch at a time, which took a lot longer, and probably why I didn't start recording an hour ago. So anyway, I'm super happy with this. I'm seeing a little bit of bubbling here. I did steam block it and it looked really smooth. But I'm pretty happy with this yarn. Now can you see there's this, can you see the linen? I'm assuming it's the linen, which is those little white things sticking out. But I read somewhere, somebody was talking about this yarn and they were annoyed because of these long threads. And I just see that as sort of the kind of nice, fun characteristic of the yarn. And so I didn't worry about those. I didn't pull any out unless they were super long. And I don't know. I guess everybody has their comfort level on what they like. But I was really happy both with the pattern and with the yarn. So anyway, that's my Ranunculus story, and it was really fun. So one thing I wanted to tell you about, after, let's see, between my last podcast and this one, so I think it was last weekend, we had the Black Sheep Gathering in Albany, Oregon. And I was very disappointed because I had plans to go to a music festival and the dates conflicted. Well, we couldn't go to the music festival, and frankly, it would have been very hard for me to do that. It would have been foolish for me to do the music festival at that point. And my husband had a little issue that came up as a complication. So we did not go to the festival. And there, I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to go to this. I really want to go to Black Sheep. And I had already podcasted, so you might have seen how I was then. And I felt pretty functional then. I was, according to the CDC, my county health department and my doctor all said I wouldn't be shedding virus. And for most of it, I wore a mask. I really wanted to go, and I did. And then it was just the next day I told you I was just totally wasted, but it was very fun to go. I would have loved to have gone with other friends, but I wasn't sure if I could make it for as long as they wanted to go. I'm gonna cough. So anyway, I thought I should drive by myself, and it's about 45 minutes up the freeway. It's always fun to see the fiber festivals, and if I had been feeling really energetic, I would have done my usual, which is go visit the sheep and the llamas and the alpaca. But I didn't do that, and it took me, I know I was dragging, and I'm inclined to talk to people, and I ended up buying excuse me, more than I intended, partly because I get attached to people while I'm talking to them, and then I can't resist buying their product. Okay, I'm having to pause again. So one of the things I found at Black Sheep, I found a yarn that felt very similar to this yarn, and unfortunately it was in a very similar color, although it is a fabulous color. So I know it's the same colorway roughly, but this is very different. This is Manos del Uruguay Milo, and the first yarn I got when I resumed knitting, which was quite a few years ago now, the first yarn I got was Manos del Uruguay yarn, and it was so good. It was very thick, woolly yarn in a gorgeous color. And I see that this one has the location of where this was made and the artisan. And it says they're proud members of the World Fair Trade Organization. Anyway, the yarn is 65% merino and 35% linen. And so it is like, you can see all that white in there is what I like so much about this yarn, which only has, I think I told you it was only 15% linen. So this has 35%. So this would actually be maybe a better summer weight yarn. I got 2 skeins of this, and it is wow, I can't find the yardage. 380 yards. So it's not as much yardage, but it is a thicker yarn. I think we decided it was, it says, it recommends a gauge of 20 to 22 stitches. So what do you think? Is that DK or is it sport? But anyway, it's thicker. So you could probably, if you did make a ranunculus out of this, which would be gorgeous, I think you could probably do a single strand. Anyway, I just loved that. And then these aren't all I got, but I hate to go through all my acquisitions, and I'm sure I'll show you as time passes. But the other one that really made my heart sing was, there was a booth. It was the Wildflower Farm, and the owner was sharing a booth. She's from Talent, Oregon, and she had a lot of some hand spun yarn, and then she had some that was from the mill. And this one is hand spun Gotland sheep yarn. So she has some Gotland sheep, and it's just, I don't know if you can tell from this. Maybe back here is better. This is really a true gray. And one of the things about buying some of the natural colors, you know, the undyed, natural, straight from the sheep yarn, is that a lot of them are colors that are very beautiful. They're the natural color and more of the browns. And those are lovely, but they really aren't my colors. And I really like the grays. And this is a true gray. And I can put it up against my black, and it's really gray, not brown. So, do we see a similarity here? Anyway, it's just a lovely rustic yarn. It is not super, super soft, but I do have a vision of making it a shawl, probably. But we'll see. It's 120 yards, and they were all different sizes, and I might ask her if she has more yarn from the sheep. The name of the sheep was Mr. Big Lincoln. So he's not a Lincoln breed, but he's a Gotland breed. But anyway, he's a nice sheep, I heard. So there was that. And then, you know, I have tried, I think I've talked before about trying to be more of a less monogamous knitter, so I have more things that I could just reach for on the needles. And I do have 2 other whips. I actually have 5 whips, but 2 are waiting. They're hibernating, and they might be redone or something. I don't know what's going to happen to them. But I have 2 that are going along nicely. I just turned my attention to my ranunculus because it was so fun to work on those. big needles. But I do have, and I did make progress since I last did a podcast. If I can just find the back, I made some more headway on my Trelawny sweater. No, I think she calls it top. Trelawny top. So I've shown you before. That is by Tamy Gore, and that is her version. And that's one reason I picked this color, is it was closer to what she had done. No, I didn't pick this color. I thought about this color. I picked this color because I really liked the light on the dark there. And it's just so nice. I just love that yoke. So so I'm really curious to see how this neckline works. I tried it on and it looks good so far. So I'm pretty happy with it. I did the steam block, which I think I already talked about last time, just to test it, and it looks pretty good, and I'm just on the straightaway now. So I will resume that next. And I'm knitting that on my Chiagos, and I'm pretty sure I'm doing a size 4 with that. And I'm trying to write things down. Are you good at writing down what you've worked on or what you're working on? I used to be, and at times I do, but here I am, and I just I go through these spurts of being really lazy about it. I'm doing a size 2 in this, which is a 38-inch bust, and it seems to be working great. And then I will add another probably 3 inches on the bottom. And I've already started doing that, adding maybe every 6 inches, I do an increase. I do 2 increases under each arm, and I've already put in, I've probably done 5 already. I like doing them earlier rather than at the end. It seems to work better for me, and it just creates a looser thing, especially since this will be a summer project. So anyway, that is all working out really nicely. Oh gosh, missing ball here. I've talked before, I'm using the Queensland United yarn, half wool, half cotton, and this is in the denim colorway, and the blue I'm using, I think, is robin's egg. So anyway, that is that. So I think I'm just going to tell you, about something I read recently, and then I'm going to end this podcast. I actually read quite a bit during my COVID experience. Partly, I found it really good to distract myself. So I did knit and I did read. I read, and I talked to you last time about most of the books I read. I'm currently reading Deacon King Kong by James McBride, and I'll tell about that when I finish. And I had I have a book club that has been pretty inactive during COVID, but we've gotten together recently, and people were all over the map about whether they wanted to keep what they wanted to read and how much they were willing to commit to finishing a book every month. Some people like to read a lot of nonfiction, so we really debated about what to do, and one person recommended a short story that she had recently read by Toni Morrison, the Nobel Prize winning author of a number of incredible books. I have not read a lot of Toni Morrison. I read one of her books a while ago, and I don't know if it was a particularly difficult book, but I found it a very challenging book in terms of following what was going on. I think it was jazz, and I've always wanted to return to her. I do read challenging books. I read I read War and Peace during COVID. I read a lot of the 18th, 19th century and some earlier. And so I usually don't have a problem. I mean, some books are just going to be more difficult to read. Didn't get through Ulysses. But I'm up for a challenging book, but I remember at the time I read jazz, I found it difficult. So I'd like to revisit her, but I am so happy that I read the short story. What I heard is that the short story we read was the only short story she had ever written, and it is called Recitatif. I'll put the name of everything I've talked about, including that, in the show notes below, so you can check it out. And it is a short story where she talks, there's one character who is talking. It's told in the first person by one of the characters. And you are made aware in the first page or so that she is a young girl, and she's in a foster care, or I think an orphanage situation, and she has to share a room with another girl who is a different race than her. But Toni Morrison does not tell us which one of them is black and which is white. And it's a brilliant concept, and it's an incredible story. I read mine. I was laid up, and I was like, I guess I could have ordered it. Somebody sent me a link, and it turns out that you can find the whole text online, I believe. And I ended up listening to what I listened to was the audio on Spotify, and it was narrated by LaVar Burton. So I haven't yet paid for Spotify, so I had a little bit of I had to put up with some ads on there, but not too bad. And he's an enjoyable narrator. So anyway, the brilliance of the story is most of us, as we go along, want to label one of these girls as one color or another color. And it's really a fascinating exercise to see if you want to do that and why you want to do it. And in our group, people had all kinds of reasons they said they thought one was this, and they were all primarily stereotypes of either white people or black people. And everybody should read this story and talk about why you're coming up with all these stereotypes. It was really fascinating, and I doubt that there would be anybody who could read it just completely without. I knew ahead of time that was the sort of the conceit of the story and the premise of it, that you would feel this urge. I would be surprised if LaVar Burton said he felt the same urge. It is very interesting, but I knew ahead of time that was a premise, and I was trying to suppress that part of me that wanted to say, oh, Black people do this, white people do this. And even with that, there were times where I'd want to label. It was very interesting. I do have an opinion about which character was which color. But I believe it's because the person I chose to be white was somebody who said that they but Black and was sort of like it was during the civil rights movement when things were really heating up with that, and I believe only a white person would say, oh, but we all get along just fine. That was just I don't know if that's stereotyping, maybe it is, but that was the only thing I could think of that to figure out which color somebody was that wasn't a statement about what they chose to do, what they ate. I mean, honestly, it's very interesting. The desire to categorize. I think maybe as humans we learn to categorize early on for some safety reasons, or you want to know what group you are so you don't run into the bad tribe. I don't know, but it does seem like there's something that we want to label people. And it is, excuse me, this book is a really good exercise in finding out how strong that urge is. So I highly recommend the story. It goes really quickly. I'd be surprised if it took more than an hour to hear the story read. And it was a delightful thing to do while knitting. So anyway, that's my story. I am feeling, despite my little coughing attack here, I am feeling a lot better. I haven't been coughing until this moment. I still feel, after being active, that there's a moment that I just have to sit down. I felt like I actually went to the doctor because I was continuing to have a sore throat, and she thought I had heartburn from lying down too much. And I've had heartburn 32 years ago when I had my last baby, but I'm pretty sure I didn't have heartburn. But I did think I might have been making things worse from lying down, and I started resting with my head up, and my sore throat immediately went away. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about health, or maybe she told me my lungs sounded good and I felt better. Who knows? She did say, when I complained a little bit about the fatigue, she did say, you're not 20 anymore. Knife in the heart. But I am feeling really great. Let me see. There was something I wanted to tell you though. I was under the impression that you should test negative with a home antigen test. And boy, is there disagreement on that. I was continuing to test positive till past the 10th day. And that's when I called my public health department, and I called my doctor's office, and they both said, don't test yourself after COVID, because you could continue to test positive for months ahead. On the other hand, so I took them at their word, and they said, and then they'll say, you know, wear a mask in public, or so it's very confusing. I also read some articles that said that the home antigen test was a really good test of whether you're shedding virus. And I read a doctor in the Washington Post, Dr. Wen, advises advised somebody to isolate until she tested negative. I don't know. I have tested negative, but it took longer than I expected, and it caused a great deal of concern. So I don't know what to think about that. I did not take Paxlovid, forget how it's pronounced, but I didn't take that. Maybe I would have felt better if I had. It had some side effects that made me a little concerned, that you could alter your taste temporarily, and it's funny, but that didn't seem like something I could tolerate. Okay, so I think I've now started blathering and not talking about knitting, so I guess I should wrap this up. I hope you are having a lovely time. We've had, right now it's a gloomy day, but we've had fabulous summer weather. The temperatures have been in the mid to high 70s. We're supposed to have more beautiful weather ahead, and so summer is definitely here. We planted our garden, so we've had the tomatoes in for a while, but now we're getting to reap the benefits of some of the berries we have planted, and we have blueberries and strawberries and a row of blackberries and Marion berries and so forth. Not a lot of any one thing, probably more blueberries than anything, but we get enough to put berries on our yogurt or our cereal, and it's just delightful to have fresh berries in the summer. Anyway, so you have a good summer. I hope you're getting some time outside, and I hope you're getting some good knitting in, or if you're taking a break, you can get rested up and come back to it. So I've really enjoyed talking to you. You can find me on Instagram and on Ravelry as Northwest Knitting. Take care. Bye-bye.